The Great Pyramid of Giza sits at exactly 29.9792 degrees north latitude. That number might look random, until you realize the speed of light is an exact match. Somehow, an ancient civilization nailed a value we wouldn't even discover for thousands of years. So how is this even possible? Let's imagine for a moment it was you. You come into the world in a mud brick home along the Nile around 2560 BCE, deep in Egypt's 4th dynasty. Just surviving your first year is an achievement. Infant mortality is high, so families constantly pray to Hathor, goddess of childbirth. They know how fragile life is. Egyptians call their land Kemet, black land, after the fertile soil left by the Nile's floods. On one side is rich farmland, on the other is endless red desert. Your entire world exists in that narrow strip. There's no school as you'd know it. Boys help in fields or workshops. Girls grind grain, fetch water, and care for siblings. You learn by doing. People play Senate, a board game tied to the journey to the afterlife. Sports include handball, swimming, and even river games where you try to knock someone off their boat, which is pretty risky when there are crocodiles nearby. Okay, so religion is everywhere. Egyptians believe in thousands of gods, magic, and messages through dreams. It's not a weekly ritual. It shapes every single part of daily life. Everything revolves around the Nile. The year has 3 seasons: Akhet, which is the flooding, Peret, the planting, and Shamu, the harvest. During the flood, farming stops. That's when people work on the king's projects, organized through a labor tax system. When the Nile rises, Egypt builds, and your role in that is about to begin. The flood season ends, the fields dry out, and around that time, a local official arrives at your village with a list of names. Yours is on it. Since the 4th dynasty, when the Nile floods and farming stops, the pharaoh's administration calls workers to serve on state projects. There's no pay, no interview. This is corvée, labor as taxation, applied to every able-bodied man below official rank. Money doesn't exist yet, so you pay with your time and your body. So yeah, you're going to Giza. For centuries, people believed the pyramids were built by slaves, whipped under a blazing sun. That image comes largely from Herodotus, a Greek historian who visited Egypt 2,000 years after the pyramids were built. He's been called both the father of history and the father of lies. Hollywood filled in the rest. But archaeologists have found no evidence of slavery at the site, while there is clear evidence of labor taxation across ancient Egypt. Excavations at Height El Garab revealed a state-supported workforce that was well-fed, treated medically, and given proper burials. Workers were even buried near the pyramid itself, an honor slaves would not receive. Laborers were recruited seasonally, serving 2 to 3 months before returning home. So you're not a slave, but you're not free to refuse either. You say goodbye to your family, pack what little you own, and start walking toward the plateau, toward something so massive it rises above the desert from a full day's journey away. When you finally reach Giza, your first thought is that you were not told the full story. You were told you were going to a construction site. What you're actually walking into is a city. The settlement sprawls across more than 17 acres, built by the crown to support construction of the Great Pyramids. It's divided into worker barracks, artisan homes, food facilities, storage areas, and an administrative center. There are workshops, animal pens, and buildings filled with scribes. And everywhere you look, someone is recording something. Your name, your gang, your rations, your output. Temporary laborers sleep in barracks with communal quarters, kitchens, and storage. You're packed in with dozens of other men. There's no privacy and barely enough room to stretch out. This is your new home. But get this, the food is actually better than anything you're used to. Archaeologists estimate over 4,000 pounds of meat from cattle, sheep, and goats were prepared daily for workers. Back home, meat was rare. Here, it's routine. Large-scale breweries show beer wasn't just a drink, but a major source of calories. And the real marvel isn't just the pyramid rising above you, it's everything behind it. Supplying that much meat required tens of thousands of animals, along with entire communities raising them. The government effectively supported a massive network of herders, workers, and families just to keep food flowing. And that's before you count quarry crews, boat operators, scribes, bakers, and tool makers. The pyramid is what survives, but the system that sustained it is just as staggering. Your first real assignment at Giza has nothing to do with the pyramid itself, because before a single block goes up, someone has to pull them out of the earth. And that someone is you. Most of the stone is quarried right on the Giza plateau, so your walk is short. The view isn't. The ground is carved open, and below you, workers swing in rhythm against the rock face. You grab your tools and climb down. For softer limestone, you use copper chisels and saws. Harder stone demands something else: dense dolerite balls, hammered again and again into the surface. Some fit in your hand, others weigh over 10 pounds, and you swing them until your shoulders burn. The chisels wear down fast, so you spend as much time waiting for resharpened tools as you do actually cutting. Dust fills everything: your mouth, your eyes, your lungs. Heat reflects off the pale stone. Sometimes wooden wedges are driven into cracks and soaked with water to split the rock. It's a slower process, and it still absolutely drains you. People like to say this kind of work must have needed something more advanced: aliens, lost technology, whatever. But archaeologists straight up don't take that seriously. And standing here, yeah, the scale feels unbelievable, but that's not the same as impossible. The Great Pyramid alone required about 2.3 million blocks. The tools were simple: copper, wood, rope, and stone. Experiments show 4 workers can cut a 2.5-ton block in about 4 days, faster with water. Multiply that effort across thousands of workers, and suddenly you can meet the needed pace. The mystery was never the tools, it was the coordination. After weeks swinging hammers in the quarry, you get reassigned: transport duty. And the moment you understand what that means, your whole view of the operation shifts. The limestone at Giza is just the rough core. The smooth white casing stones come from Tura across the Nile. The granite for the inner chambers comes from Aswan, far to the south. It's a massive, coordinated supply chain. In your time, a now lost branch of the Nile runs right alongside the pyramid fields. Modern research calls it the Aramat branch. Causeways from the pyramids lead straight to river harbors. Boats, mud, and constant movement at the site's edge. And we actually have a first-hand account of this work. The Diary of Marir, from around 2565 BCE, records an inspector managing a crew transporting limestone to Giza. These are the oldest known papyri ever found. Marir isn't some elite official. He's a logistics officer, much closer to you than to the pharaoh. His crew of about 200 men hauled stone at Tura, loaded boats, and sailed to Giza. The loaded trip took 2 days. The return took 1. Every 10 days, they completed multiple trips, moving dozens of blocks weighing several tons each. And that's just one crew. There were likely many more running the exact same route. But getting stone to the harbor is only half the problem. And you're probably wondering, okay, how do you actually move it up onto the pyramid itself? Straight ramps, spiral ramps, internal ramps, every theory has gaps. Archaeologists agree ramps were used, but the exact system is still uncertain. The pyramid doesn't give that answer away. So the stone is loaded, the ropes are taut, and your crew leans in to pull. The sledge barely moves. Sand piles up in front of the runners like a wall, and every inch feels like dragging a house through mud. Then the man ahead crouches and pours water onto the sand. It soaks in. You pull again. The difference is immediate. With the right amount of water, sand becomes stiffer, and the sledge slides instead of plowing forward. That wall of resistance just disappears. This simple trick cut the required workforce roughly in half. And there's even a wall painting showing it, someone pouring liquid in front of a moving sledge. For years, it was dismissed as ritual. It wasn't. Modern experiments confirmed the physics. But hauling blocks is one thing. The real mystery is down at the base of the structure, where surveyors and builders are working with genuinely unsettling precision. The Great Pyramid is aligned to the cardinal directions within a few arc minutes. Its base is level to within centimeters across more than 5 hectares. 4 sides meet at the apex with almost no error, and they did this without modern tools. The leading theory is they used circumpolar stars, the ones that never set, to find true north. With a plumb line and careful sighting, they could align the structure with remarkable accuracy. One idea suggests they tracked 2 stars, aligning them vertically to establish north. At night, you watch them work. Strings stretch across the ground, eyes fixed on the sky. You don't fully understand it. You just see the result. The precision isn't impossible, it's just extraordinary and achieved with tools simple enough to carry by hand. Months have bled together. The plateau that once looked like a wound now rises in sharp steps above everything. You stopped counting the blocks years ago. At night, in the barracks thick with bread, sweat, and smoke, the same question keeps coming back. What is this actually for? You know the answer you're given. A tomb for the pharaoh, a path to the afterlife. You believe it, this idea that the soul endures if properly guided. But believing it and hauling stone for years are very different things. The priests say the king is more than a man. He maintains ma'at, cosmic order. The floods, the crops, the rising sun all depend on him. If he fails in death, everything fails with him. So this isn't just construction, it's survival. You're not building a tomb, you're helping turn a king into something eternal, holding the world together one block at a time. The pyramid itself feels like a machine for that transformation. Inside, narrow shafts are cut at strange angles, aimed toward the stars, toward Orion, the realm of Osiris. You thought they were for air. They're not. Oh, and it doesn't stop there. Boats are buried nearby, full-sized vessels sealed underground to carry the king with the sun god. You've seen the pits. Even that doesn't fully explain what this place is, because parts of it genuinely don't make sense. Chambers, passages, spaces that seem to lead nowhere, a grand gallery, hidden rooms, too complex to fully understand. And somehow, long after you're gone, people will still be guessing. They'll find empty spaces deep inside and argue about their purpose, scanning the stone and still coming up short. You're building something that will outlast understanding itself. You're working higher now. From this height, the plateau looks almost unreal. The ropes strain under each new block, and everyone moves more carefully. A fall from here isn't survivable, and everyone knows it. Inside, the structure is being sealed. Passages closed, chambers blocked. You've glimpsed some corridors, but only architects and priests enter the deepest spaces. When you ask, older workers deflect. Some don't know, others won't say. Whatever is inside, not everyone was meant to understand it. And strangely, thousands of years later, people will feel the exact same way. In 2017, physicists used muons, particles from cosmic rays, to scan the Great Pyramid. These particles passed through stone, letting scientists map hidden spaces. They found a massive void, at least 30 meters long, above the Grand Gallery. If it's a chamber, it's the first major discovery inside the pyramid since the 1800s. No one has entered it. No one knows its purpose. Then, in 2023, the same team mapped a separate corridor near the north face, about 30 feet long. They inserted a tiny camera and saw a narrow passage with a vaulted ceiling, untouched for over 4,500 years. Its purpose is still unknown. Some researchers think something important lies beneath it, possibly even Khufu's burial chamber. So the most studied monument on Earth is still hiding things. That's not speculation. It's measured, tested, confirmed, and still unresolved. Okay, and then there's this. The speed of light is 299,792,458 meters per second. The pyramid's latitude is 29.9792458 degrees north. The numbers match. But here's the thing. The measurement systems didn't exist when the pyramid was built. The Egyptians didn't use meters, and precise latitude came much later. Still, it's a pretty odd alignment. Out of anywhere on Earth, it lands there. It doesn't mean anything, but it's just enough to make you pause, and then keep going. Then the last stone goes in. The outer casing of polished Tura limestone is set, smoothed so finely it catches the sun and throws it back. From a distance, the structure blazes white against the desert, and at the very top, a pyramidion, likely covered in gold or electrum, crowns the apex. The Egyptians call white the color of purity, of the divine. What you've helped build doesn't just sit on the earth, it radiates. It'll remain the largest structure on the planet for nearly 4,000 years. And then you look at your hands. The remains found in the workers' tombs tell the story. Muscle strain, bent spines, deaths from injuries on the job. Skeletons show arthritis and damage to the lower vertebrae. Your back hasn't straightened in years. Your knuckles are thick and hard. Some men lost limbs on this site. The bones show cuts that healed, meaning surgeons saved them, but the work took them anyway. Here's the thing people miss when they debate whether you were a slave or a laborer or a conscript. The label doesn't change what the stone weighs. There's evidence of men working through severe bone infections. They had access to care. They just felt pressure to keep going, to meet what the state demanded. So yeah, you were fed. Yeah, you were treated. And yeah, your body still paid the price. The bones found near the site show the same pattern over and over. Hard labor, broken bodies. That's the workforce. The thing is, the hardest part was never a single block or invention. It was the system. For decades, under Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, thousands of people had to be fed, organized, and kept working season after season. That's what built the pyramids, sustained, relentless human effort. You came from a village along the Nile. You ate your rationed bread, pulled your ropes, slept in the barracks, and rose again each morning. And what you helped build is still standing thousands of years later, while everything else from your world is dust. That's not a small thing. You walk home along the Nile. The plateau fades behind you, but the river is unchanged. The same current, the same green banks. Your village hasn't changed. You have. Your body carries it. Your hands, your back. Some who left with you never returned. Others came back quiet. You eat with your family and talk about the harvest instead. Life resumes. The floods, the planting, the harvest. The rhythm continues. But you carry something no one else does. You know that monument from the inside. You felt its weight, breathed its dust. Most people will only ever see it from afar. You know what it cost. That structure is still standing over 4,500 years later. Empires rose and fell around it. Rome, the Ottomans. Napoleon looked at it and saw something ancient. It has outlasted them all. And it's still not finished giving up its secrets. Scans have revealed hidden corridors. New voids have been found. Some spaces remain sealed, untouched since your time. We're still waiting to learn what's inside. The builders weren't slaves or myths. They were people like you, workers from across Egypt, leaving their marks in graffiti, naming their crews, joking around even here. They showed up and built something that defied time. You lived it, you built it, and we're still trying to understand how. Thousands of years later, people will argue about whether men like you even existed. Slaves, they'll say. Aliens. But you were there, and the pyramid is still standing. What's strange about all of this is that the confusion people have about who built the pyramids isn't really about a lack of evidence. The Diary of Merer exists, the worker cemeteries exist, the bakeries, the ration records, the healed bones, all of it exists. The confusion exists because it's somehow more comfortable to imagine advanced civilizations or something out of this world than it is to sit with the actual answer, which is that it was just people. Exhausted, underpaid, occasionally competitive, deeply human people who went home thinner and never got a single line of credit in history for one of the most recognizable structures ever built. People who did something so incredible, millions of people think it wasn't humanly possible. And maybe that's what this video is really about. Maybe the real reason it was devastating to build the pyramids is because eventually everyone would just forget. The people who built them have been erased twice, once by time and once by a culture that finds the mundane truth less interesting than a myth. But the mundane truth is actually the more impressive story. No whips, no aliens, just wet sand, fiber rope, coarse bread, and the slow grinding work of tens of thousands of ordinary people who figured it out anyway. That deserves to be said out loud at least once. Thanks for spending some time with people who never got a monument of their own. Go check out our other videos if you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you next time.